Character and youth development are snappy little catchphrases that camp pros love to use, mostly in their marketing pitches, brochures, and websites. And for the last 3 decades, Michael Brandwein has been spoon-feeding, yes, Michael, spoon-feeding camp professionals how to not just talk the talk, but how to walk the walk. Yes, I am a convert, as is Sam, and an advocate for what Michael preaches, teaching our campers and staff the skills of life and doing it in an engaging, upbeat, fun way. He is the high exalted Grand Master of Camp Consulting. He's our Fred Rogers, and he's back again. This is the Day Camp Pod.
This is the Day Camp Pod from Go Camp Pro, bringing you the best ideas, strategies, and discussions in the day camp industry. You can find our show notes at daycamppodcast.com.
Let me tell you about CampMinder, the #1 camp database in the world. It has the most robust offerings of service features found anywhere. Every feature works together to create a full, seamless system that helps your camp office run more efficiently while giving your camp family state-of-the-art communication and financial tools. Check out the details at campminder.com. AMSkier is a leading insurance and strategic partner for many of the finest camps in America. AMSkier partners with camps to provide public relations, legal, medical, behavioral support, and more. Experience the AMSkier difference. Learn more at amskier.com. The Day Camp Podcast is brought to you by CRS, Commercial Recreation Specialists, your go-to source for recreation solutions that will ensure that your camp thrives. Explore their website today at CRS4Rec. CRS is serious about fun.
Welcome back to the Day Camp Pod, the place where camp pros come to talk about what's working, what's not, and where we're heading next. I'm Andy Pritikin, director of Liberty Lake in the Philly suburbs of New Jersey.
I'm Sam Thompson from Crystal Lake Park District, Crystal Lake, Illinois.
And we are joined once again. It's our annual visit with our friend Michael, who has presented in 50 states, every continent except Antarctica. We're still working on that. #1 best-selling author in the camp training and leadership field. He's got an upcoming book coming out February 22nd, although you can get it at ACA National. That's what you said, right, Michael?
Oh, yes. Yes,
excellent.
And at Tri-State.
Oh, amazing. It's called The Intentional Camp, Putting More Muscle into the Mission of Character and Youth Development. He's got 6 prior books that are on my bookshelf beside me and are used by camps everywhere. Training Terrific Staff, Volume 1 and 2. Super Staff Supervision, Learning Leadership for CITs and LITs, How to Develop Outstanding Team Leadership Training Programs at Camp. The Skill of the Day, What Great Leaders of Young People Do and Say, and Growing Great Qualities in Kids, the Laser Beam Technique for Bringing Out the Best in Young People. He's an American Camp Association multiple award winner, former board member, and best of all, he's been on the Day Camp Pod every season, and people like him. Right? He's a smart dude. He has a way with words and a genius ability of putting concepts into words. And with all of that, Michael, once again, we thank you.
Wow. Well, if you put me in the same paragraph as Fred Rogers, I'm ready to just stop. Just name the sponsors and give them a couple links to things, and let's just stop right there. That's the best compliment I can get. And
I know.
I'm sorry to have to correct you, my friend. This is my 7th book. But that doesn't count the 3 legal thrillers that I wrote with James Patterson, for which I have never gotten credit for. And in fact, if I may continue on this rant, Sam Thompson wrote a book with James Patterson. She was never mentioned. And our son Benjamin, who is a special needs teacher of special needs students in the Chicago Public Schools, he has a cat named Mimi who has also written a book with James Patterson. And my theory is that I believe almost every person in the United States now has written a book with James Patterson.
Well, it would be great if we can get some of that James Patterson money. We could open up some more camps. There's no doubt about it.
I'm mentioning him a few times to see if you can get him on the podcast. Maybe he went to day camp. Maybe that's why he's so successful, because of.
All right. Well, ask Benjamin's cat. Maybe he has an in.
That's right.
And in the meantime, you've been on this podcast so many times that I was at the Wake conference a few months ago, and I was standing at the breakfast bar getting my breakfast burrito.
Western Association of Independent Camps.
Yes, our good friends, the cool kids of camping, as I like to call them. And some guy walks up to me and he sees my name tag. He's like, Andy Pritikin. And I was like, yeah, how you doing? He's like, yeah, I've heard you on that Michael Brandwein podcast. You're excellent. And I said, well, That's what happens when
It's
you
both
have somebody on.
unfortunate and very funny at the same time.
So 7 books. All right. And I love the title. So you've always been talking about intentional camp.
Well, I made that term up. Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I think it was like around 2012, 2013 when I went to one of the first sessions that you ever went to, you really started talking about intentional
Right.
camp. And
Yes.
when you were talking about how camps, brochures and websites, they all sort of look the same. And why don't you pick the behaviors, the traits that you really want to teach at your camp and make those your start points and all that kind of thing. And you really
Right.
changed my brain and my camp at that point.
Thank you.
So tell us what this book is about.
Well, I've never put what you're referring to in a book form. I've been writing this one for 5 years. And one of the reasons it took so long was to try to keep it very readable. This is the first book. It has tons of pictures on it, almost every page. There's lots of white space. It's very fast paced, as all of them are. But I really, because we have a new generation of how people read, etc., I wanted this to be something that people would pick up and be able on every page to take things and be able to use right away. Because I mean, the main reason for the book was, well, a couple of reasons. One, I want to simplify this thing of character education and youth development. We've made it much too complicated and unnecessarily so. And I also feel passionate about keeping our promise to the community. We're very proud of saying that we transform young people through the camp experience. But, are we really sure that we're keeping that promise? I think we do. I know that 2 of you do. And all of you listening to this, camp is maybe the best engine, is my opinion, that's ever been built to transform human beings. It's better than school. It's better than home, even though parents, of course, are our main teachers, but it's better than home because we've got all these groups of young people. It's not just your siblings and your parents. It's camp. We could do a whole podcast on why camp is incredibly powerful. But what I wanted to do was help people maximize that power so that every hour when you walk by, can I give you a really fast example? Because I was just mentioning this to somebody yesterday.
Please.
Every camp during staff training has a tour. So I have a whole section in the book about the camp tour. The camp tour is great, but the main purpose of it is to take the people who are new and say, this is Sam's area at Arts and Crafts. And let's go over to Andy's shed because this is where he does drama, or this is where he does tennis, or this is the pool. And it orients people as to where things are. I have a deep list of wishes. And one of them is that when we and by the way, the people who've been there before wonder why they have to do the tour again, and they're just standing in the back talking, which distracts everybody because they know where Sam's area is. They don't need that. What if we, at each area, had the people who are in charge, or just members of the leadership team, if there isn't a particular specialist, and said, hi, this is Sam's Arts and Crafts area. And she and our very new assistant craftsperson are going to explain to you what we use arts and crafts for. And then instead of just welcoming everyone and Sam saying what she does beautifully, well, we have some exciting new projects and we're doing some things with leather making and new friendship bracelets and we're going to be painting this and whatever. Instead of exciting people that way, she could say we're going to be using all of this. And at Arts and Crafts, what we do is we teach these 2 or 3 qualities. This is what we're focusing on this summer. It's so easy. It doesn't cost any money to do that. And she could say, for example, we're going to teach people how to make friends while at Arts and Crafts, because Tanisha and I have been talking about how almost all of our projects year after year tend to be solo projects. In other words, you put materials in front of you and you make this and you go home from day camp and you show it to grandma and you put it on the fridge. And that's what Arts and Crafts is like. There's nothing wrong with that. But Tanisha and I this year are going to focus on doing some things that require our kids to work with each other to create something. And what that's going to teach them about relationship building and supporting each other and encouraging each other and give compliments to each other. We've got it planned out so that when they're doing these things, they will develop those compliments, those qualities. And that's just one example of something that doesn't cost any money and has a very subtle, really cool thing, which is that if you tell Sam that you'd like her to do that in the tour, then Sam, you and I know that a couple weeks before you have to give the tour, when you're preparing your remarks, your boss, Andy, has said, please include this as part of the tour. So now you have to think about, what are we doing at crafts this year that's really about youth development? I mean, I know you're going to say creativity, because of course that's art. But beyond that, every day camp works on creativity by having kids do collages and do fun art projects. But what are we doing that teaches kids how to make compliments? How do we teach kids how to give feedback to other people? You can do that at crafts. How do we get them to have more confidence by, at crafts, incorporating in the program, which you do brilliantly in the third week? You have all of the kids say, you have them make something, and you say to them, how do you usually do this? What do you mean? Well, which hand do you usually use when you paint? Well, my right hand. Exactly. Today, I want you to pick something that you can do differently than you usually do. When you make friendship bracelets, do you usually use a lot of colors, or do you just use one color? Well, I don't want to use one color. Well, that's a different choice you could make. So today we're going to do things differently. And when you do things differently, let's talk. And this isn't a lecture, but it's while the kids are making the bracelets. You say to them, what does this feel like, folks? And why do you think it's hard to do something differently? And this, of course, teaches them that you don't have to be perfect, which our instructors at day camp, the two of are constantly, they're frequently reporting that kids have this need for perfection these days that they may not have had 10 and 20 years ago. They get all anxious if the project isn't exactly right. It won't be right because they're doing it, they're putting the paintbrush in their mouth and trying to paint with their teeth. That says that you've got confidence, that you're flexible. These are all things that you can talk about and incorporate into it, and it costs no money. And it isn't complicated. And that is one of my usual long-winded answers as to why I wanted to get this book in front of people.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, the growth mindset is what we're teaching there. There's no doubt about it. And I was in a conversation this morning with folks from the National Association of Social and Emotional Learning, right? I'm doing a session with them at Tri-State at 8:30 in the morning on Tuesday. And I was trying to explain to them how camps, generally, we have our beacons, right? We have our star points, we have our, like, this, our mission and all that kind of stuff. And then we get stuck with the rubber to the road stuff. And when I said that you spoon feed us, Michael, I was saying that and patronizing you a little bit, but that is what you try to do. And you actually do come up with questions to ask kids and things that are super helpful. And I really appreciate it, because if one of your star points or whatever is respect, or like you said, creativity, how do you teach creativity? Like, creativity is the top, right? Like, how do you get to the bottom and teach the aspects, the behaviors of creativity? That's what camps needs to learn to do.
Absolutely. And it's teachable, it's learnable. When we visit school, I do a lot of work with school teachers. When I visit schools during the break and the professional development sessions, I run down the hallways with my camera and I take pictures of all the signs in the school. I have a massive collection. And you know what they say, because well, this isn't a new thing. They say, be kind. It says respect. The gym has a big sign that says responsibility or honesty, painted on the concrete walls in very nice colors. Some camps have picked up on that. They say, oh, character counts. And so they have these character words. And I'm really interested to see, we can talk in a moment about the ACA's great character initiative. People need to get past just putting up signs and telling people that we want our campers to be kind, and knowing what to do between 11 and 11:30 on a random Tuesday morning to teach kids how to be kind. And now I hope you'll say, can you give me an example?
Can you give me an example, please?
Of course I can give you an example. When we're out at the athletic field, one of the chapters in the book explains how easy it is to first go to arts and crafts and have kids make newspaper hats. And they have your name on it, Andy. Everybody has a big name on their hat. Now, when you run out to soccer on this random Tuesday, your leader says, you can't kick the ball in the goal unless everyone on your team has touched that ball first for the next 10 minutes. And those goals are worth 10 points apiece. So now the kids get excited. How will we know that everyone on our team has touched the ball? Well, as soon as you touch the ball with your foot, you take your hat, you throw it on the ground. So unless everyone on your team is hatless, you can't score in the goal. If you do, maybe we deduct 2 points. How easy is that? It's so simple. Why wouldn't every day camp in the world, and you don't have to play soccer like that every day, but just for 5 minutes, you have a special challenge round. And adults get so negative sometimes. They say, well, the teens, they're not going to play that. Of course they'll play that way. This makes it harder. You tell them that, by the way, when the hats are thrown on the ground, if the ball rolls or is kicked over a hat, you lose possession. I mean, there's ways of making this very challenging and appropriately complicated for our older campers. But the whole point of it is to teach kindness. How? Well, because now people have to look over to the shoulder and see if young camper Michael Brandwein, who was never kicked a ball to, no one ever passed a basketball to me when I went to day camp, no one ever kicked a soccer ball to me. Why? Because they were smart. They knew that if they kicked the ball to me, that they'll lose the game. I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know about sports. And one of the reasons I didn't is because I didn't get any practice. It was circular, right? People didn't pass to me because they never got a chance to practice kicking the ball or shooting the ball in basketball. So this is an example of something that, again, I keep repeating this. It doesn't really take any time. It incorporates, by the way, the arts and crafts people and their hats, and then the sports people. It brings the camp community together, and it teaches kids to, quote, be more aware of the needs of others, unquote, which is an essential element of kindness and is a piece of cake when you're running sports programs at day camp.
So I put this kind of mentality and this kind of intentionality into my camp about 15 years ago. And when I did, I was worried at first because a lot of the people that are running my arts and crafts and are running my sports are teachers. And I was a teacher. I used to sit in these teachers' rooms and listen to the toxic negativity and such from teachers who just keep running it back year after year, and they don't really necessarily put too much creativity into things like this. And I put forth my whole initiative about character, and I thought that they were going to deflect it and be like, oh, Andy, just trying to make us do this hokey stuff. And instead, they welled up and said, this is why I became a teacher. This is what I really want to do with the kids. But when I'm at school, I don't get that flexibility. I'm teaching for the test, and that's my main focus. And like you said, this is a wonderful place to do this, but your people who are actually doing it with the kids need to be given the freedom and the tools and the permission to be silly and to be flexible and to do these things, because unfortunately, a lot of these teacher folks have been institutionalized over the years, and they're very rigid. And I show them my Michael Brandwein books, and they go, oh my gosh, look at this soccer with 4 goals. It's one of your first books, right? And it's such a fun, easy concept of what you put forth in there. And yet here's a phys ed teacher who never even thought of that, because they're just so focused on teaching the skills of soccer.
That's right.
End of sentence.
For over 100 years, summer camps have been an integral part of the AMSkier world. AMSkier is a strategic partner for summer camps across the country, building personal relationships and providing valuable resources to their clients and friends. Every day, AMSkier is proud to support camps and make them safer. Skier was founded by AMSkier in 1920 and is now the 3rd generation of Skier family leadership. My friends Henry, Jeffrey, and Amy, and the experienced AMSkier staff, they eat, sleep, and breathe summer camps while fostering partnerships with camps that last for decades, if not centuries. Give AMSkier the opportunity to find solutions for your most challenging insurance needs. I can tell you firsthand, they truly go above and beyond. Learn more at amskier.com. As a camp director, you're a leader of your camp and a pillar in your community. When your customers put tremendous trust in you, CampMinder's powerful management software tools deliver the day-to-day task support that helps you make every touchpoint moment memorable and every summer stellar. CampMinder has the most user-friendly platform for both your staff and your parents, and is backed by a team of crafty engineers and customer service associates who are constantly thinking of ways to optimize your camp's database, communication, and financial management. With state-of-the-art app for your camp families and an API available for third-party softwares, CampMinder is always evolving elite summer camp software. Check them out today at campminder.com.
One of my favorite things, Michael, that you've always said is doing art under the table. Under
Oh,
the
That's
picnic
right.
another
table.
great
Cover
one.
the- You
Yes.
cover the picnic table with a tablecloth, right?
Mhm.
Which could be just a gimmick, but then when they're under it, what you do is you say, "Where are we?" And there's a whole chapter in the book about group decision making and how easy this is to really develop great skills in our kids. So let's go with that example, Sam. So now they're under the table, and I don't care what their age is. It's cool even for 12-year-olds to be under the table in this. It's not, it's just different. It's not boring. They hate boring, right? Excuse me. So now they're under the table. Their leader says, "So where are we? We could be in a cave. We could be in a spaceship. We could be underwater. Let's decide." You know that two people are going to talk at the same time and they're going to suggest different things. If we could, and we can, train our staff, and we practice this during training, if one of them said, "Well, we have two ideas. A couple of you are talking at the same time. How are we going to hear what everyone's ideas are?" And please note that's a question, because most leaders would say, "Hang on, let's go one at a time." I don't want them to do that. What I want them to say is, "People are talking at the same time. What should we do about that?" And every camper you have ever met in your life will say what you were going to say. They'll say, "Well, we have to take turns." Every camper does that. Every camper. They will start to take, excuse me, control of their process. And they will start to realize that, yes, the decision you make of where we are under the table is important, but how we get to that decision will teach you how to have relationships, how to date, how to be a parent, how to get a job, how to get promoted in your job, thinking about process. And you get all of this with a bed sheet that's torn, by the way, that you throw over a table. The good camps will use that as a gimmick to add to what I say in super staff supervision is a creative twist to a program. But the great camp will look at it and say, now they're going to have a discussion and maybe an argument about what we're going to do. So how can we talk with them, not to them, at them, no, but with them about how we make decisions as a group? And it's easy. And I give lots of examples. You have to give camp directors, leadership team people, and staff hundreds of examples, because they won't all resonate with everybody and they'll all be picturing different age and types of kids. And so if you give them lots of practical examples, they're going to grab it and they'll be able to do it.
I was lucky enough to get to read the book, which was amazing. And within the first chapter, I was rearranging my entire staff training because I had lost my focus. I was starting off with the whole group, not in their individual camps with their individual leaders and coworkers. And I was starting off with all the punitive stuff, like active shooter, missing child. So my introduction to my camp was completely off base and was missing what I needed to do. So I've switched it now to they're gonna meet with their camp director, get their swag, eat a meal, and then we're all gonna come in and do why are we there and what does each activity bring to the plate.
Outstanding.
So going back to mission, then I brought all my directors together for a meeting immediately, because I thought I haven't revisited what our mission is and what our values are in a while. And I have a couple new directors. So I started blank slate to see if it would come out the same way we had it, which was nice that it did. But now it gave us all new focus and energy into starting with the mission driven.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to you for taking that step. The book has a chapter on what I call go with the goal, and GO in goal is in bold to understand that the very first thing we should do in staff training is to let people have the answer to a forward question. And it's the forward question that makes us what I call an intentional camp. And that question is, why are we here? The WAWH question. And people always say to me, well, at the beginning of staff training, I want to do some team building. I want to introduce our new assistant director. I want to do this. I want to do that. Please don't. Please say good morning to everyone and then answer the question, why are we here? Now, if you just tell them boring, it's no good. So that's why I include dozens of ways. Well, there's different ones in all of my books, but in this book, there's new ways, again, that you can add, kind of like a cookbook with multiple recipes of how you can start training in an exciting, creative, energetic way that lets people know there's an incredible value in what we're doing. Day camp directors constantly say, I know to you, they say it to me all the time. They say, how do we make our staff so, more professional? How do we take this fun job where we're running around and get them to treat it like it's a real job? Well, one of the things I think we can definitely do better is to explain to them at the very beginning, even in the interview, which I also talk about in the book. You can do things when interviewing candidates to let them know the reason that you're going to work at our camp is to teach these 5 qualities, or these 3 qualities, or these 6 qualities. Andy's referred a few times to the term star points. This is something that there's a chapter in the book about my star points concept. And Andy, we've had this conversation. You were one of the first to adopt that when you heard me talk about that at a workshop. And you can speak to how easy it is to organize the specific changes we want camp to produce in our kids, and to use the image of a star, the 5 points on the star. And I always make the joke that if it's a Jewish camp, you can have 6 points, but the 5 points of the star. And what you can do is identify for each one of those points a character trait or a quality that we want to develop. And then that goes to your point, Sam, about the chapter on the step 1. There's 4 steps in the book about to be an intentional camp. And the first step is to refresh and refine the mission every year. And that's exactly what you did. And when we refresh and refine the mission, we revisit what are the 3, 4, 5 big focal points that we want to use camp to produce. Confidence, kindness. These are my suggestions. I explained it's not my place to tell people what they are. Respect, responsibility, creativity, whatever it is. But you pick these 4 or 5 things and you start with, this is why we're running camp. Because otherwise, what we end up with is the day camp that's excellent, has a waiting list, and is focused on creating these fun and exciting activities for kids. To which your friend Michael from Chicago says, what's the point of the activities? Let's do even more than we did. When I was on Andy, I think you mentioned I was on the national board for a period of time. During the years I was on the national board of the American Camp Association, everybody in camp was talking about, we want a seat at the table. Everybody wanted a seat at the table. And the table, folks, was a reference to the table at which the serious educators sat. We wanted to be treated not as safe, fun summer recreation. We wanted to be treated as youth development experts. And we deserve to be. But I would get into trouble because they'd say, we want a seat at the table. And I'd raise my hand and I'd say, and when we get seated there, what are we going to do? What are we going to order? What's our meal? Yeah, all right, so now we're at the table. What are we going to do? I think that we undersell what we do in the way we even explain camp on our websites, in face-to-face conversations, the way we recruit staff. Every camp says we're in the youth development business. To me, what we want to do is on Thursday at 1:45 to 2:15, we want to go up to an activity on the day camp schedule and saying, what are we working on? And if that person says something that's on the schedule, in other words, they say soccer, or they say we're making friendship bracelets, that's a good answer. But the gooder answer is, oh, Michael, we're using friendship bracelets to teach kids how to give compliments and feedback to other people. Now, that is an award-winning answer, and it's just accomplished by training staff how to do that. And you don't have to figure this out for yourself. I'm a consultant. I'm lonely. I have the time. Let me do it for you.
And he's got a lot of books, too. So in this new book, Michael, does it touch on the cue cards or the DLPing? Because I really feel that those are really important in teaching your staff this stuff.
Oh, well, sure. The book before this, Growing Great Qualities in Kids, is about what are the qualities that we want to teach to our campers. And how do we use specific and positive communication in order to teach those? So I consider those two books companion volumes. If you have the intentional camp book, it takes us step by step through the process I use in order to make sure that mission is the focus. And one of the tools that you do that then is the growing great qualities in kids. So that helps people who, for example, Sam, when you sit with your leadership team and they say, we want to work on confidence, I believe that every member of camp should be able to, on demand, to identify 3 or 4 behaviors that demonstrate confidence. And that's what I like to do in those two books. Because when you know that confidence, for example, is trying something new, or confidence is trying something harder than you did yesterday, then it allows you to do what Andy is quoting, my DLP process, which is describe and label and praise the behaviors that demonstrate qualities. So what we want to do at day camp every hour is to say to a kid, Sam, you're doing something that's harder than you did yesterday. And then you this is just one of many ways to do it. And then you say, do you know the big word for that? And then you shut up, you don't say anything. And the kid looks at you. If you've been doing this for a few days, one of the kids will say confidence, because that's what you called it before. If they don't say anything, you can say to them, it's a big word and starts with C. Or you can say it's confidence. That's what you're doing right now, is doing something that's harder than you did before. This is how our kids learn what confidence is. So that way, the approach in schools that say be confident, and they put a big banner on the wall of the gym or in the hallways, that isn't going to do it. What we need to do is know the specific behaviors. And that's one of the 4 steps in the intentional camp book. And the Growing Great Qualities book is what teaches people how to do that.
It's rubber to the road stuff. Right. It's taking those quotes that are on the walls and actually applying them.
Yeah.
And whether it's private camps, nonprofit camps that cost $100 a week, camps that cost $1,000 a week. Like, I see these signs up all over the place. Right. And yet it's one thing for the directors to understand this. It's getting that next level down. And you talk a lot about your middle management, your division leaders and such. And I'm really fortunate in that my camp is only an hour and a half away from Atlantic City. So I get to bring 25 people to Tri-State and have them listen to Michael Brandwein. But I do know that you do some springtime webinar kind of things for these folks in the past.
Yes.
And I highly recommend to the listeners out there that it's all, because, when you see Michael doing his thing, you're like, all right, this is really great, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to be Michael Brandwein and be able to put forth the same, thing to my people. Right. Well, Michael has been out there available to do it for middle management people also, not to mention all the conferences he's at.
That's a good segue too. We've got this spring on the ACA Illinois website is where you can register, but you don't have to be an ACA member and you don't have to be in Illinois. So he's got one on April 6th and 9th, or 8th and 9th, Tuesday and Wednesday.
Yes.
And it is the step-by-step system for planning and presenting your best staff training ever. So in time before we actually have to start training, it's all online or digital. So this will be good to allow more people to go. So let me repeat that. That was April 8th and 9th, Tuesday, Wednesday.
It's 2 afternoons, Sam. That's right. And it's live online. And can I give a compliment back to ACA Illinois and thanks to them, because they've supported this idea. The last one we did last year, people came from 30 states and Canada. And I'm mentioning that just to say that this isn't an Illinois or even an ACA event. Some of them weren't in ACA. Some of them signed up to be an ACA when they saw that these are the kind of resources that are available, which is wonderful. The purpose of this is, I always say to directors, how many hours will your people spend preparing training this year? I mean, we know it's more than 10. Is it 20? Is it 30? I mean, it's going to be dozens and dozens and dozens of hours. How much is that person's time worth? I mean, pick a dot. Is it worth $10 an hour, $50 an hour? I mean, what is it worth? They're not paid that, of course, but what is it worth? The purpose of the online webinar is to say, let's do training together. Let's identify our schedule. what a good order of things is, how to keep people awake, how to involve them, how to get them to teach each other, how to get them to practice the skills that we're telling them, because talking is not teaching. Training is about what camp is about, which is experiential learning, learning by doing. How do you make your training more alive like that and not reading things like that or pointing to PowerPoints or stuff like that? All of this is accessible, and the whole point of this is just to support people. They're so busy, and I know how stressful it is to put this together. And I know at this time of year, people are looking at their schedule from last year and they're saying, well, we could change this a little bit and change that a little bit. There's secrets to making this really well. Can I give you one example, please? Day camps in their training have a 45-minute, this is a generalization, but you'll know what I'm talking about. They have a 45-minute period in the staff training that's called games. And on the staff training schedule, it says games with Tony and with Sarah. And you go out to a field and they teach 45 minutes worth of games that we want you to do at day camp. Hold that thought. Now, what if we took lots of these games, not all of them, but we made them into 3, 4, or 5-minute segments, and we sprinkled those through our day of day camp training, our 2 days of day camp training. So, for example, we did 20 minutes on managing the behavior of antsy kids, and then we ran outside and we showed people a quick game that is a neat way to learn other people's names, and they run around, and then they come back in and they sit down. That's really good for training. It invigorates people. It's fun, but this is a very subtle point. And I'm confessing I didn't understand this even 10 years ago. I only started thinking about this 5 years ago. But this is a model of exactly what we want staff to do with the games, because we don't teach them 45 minutes of games so that in a games period or free play period, they then go out and they know what to do. We want them to play rock, paper, scissors in new ways while they're waiting for the arts and crafts to start, or while they have finished lunch early. So we stand up and we play a quick game with them. It's the stuff, as all good day camp leaders know, that we do in between the scheduled activities that is often the most meaningful and memorable. And we always want our staff to have a repertoire of those. And we always tell them this is good for that, and this game is good for that. But we could model I use the word sprinkling, the sprinkling of these kinds of quick 2-3 minute activities throughout the day camp day by sprinkling them throughout our training day. So this is just one of 100 examples that we can give people if they'll send somebody to this. And I hope that this is helpful to you. I hope it's supportive.
And if you want to hear a little bit more about the in-between things, our episode with Michael last year was the Grout is Great episode.
Yes.
Which is really,
That's right. I forgot
he
that.
lays it out great.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
The other one that Andy mentioned earlier was Super Staff Supervision. And there's one on May 16th on that. The quick course on outstanding skills to coach, motivate, and bring out the best in your staff. And that one is online as well from 10 to 4:15 that day. So yeah, the Super Staff Supervision.
Yeah, and we'll have this stuff in the show notes, Sam. Make sure that, because I don't know if those two things I sent to Matt, so send that along to Matt.
Okay.
So what are some of the barriers that you've seen with people in doing real youth development in day camps, Michael?
Good question, Andy. The first thing that I think of with barriers is what I'm hearing now are people who are bending over it like pretzels saying, well, we want to teach character at camp, but slow down because there is no one kind of character and there is no good character, and we have to be sensitive to the needs of the community and the diverse interests of our different campers and whatever. All of that is 100% true. But what pains me is that it's important to get the message out there. So thank you for asking this question to people, that when you sit like Sam did with her leadership team and say, what are the specific qualities that we want to develop in our kids? In Growing Great Qualities in Kids, in that book, I put it in a very simple question. What makes a good person? And people jump up and say, well, that's a value judgment. Of course, it's a value judgment. The key to remember is that almost all of the values that relate to identifying qualities we want to build in campers through camp, we share all of them. So, I mean, and here, You mentioned I've been on 6 continents. I have. I'm not saying that to brag, but I have a large database now. And I work with leadership teams all over the globe. And I say to them, let's take sticky notes and write down this activity is in the intentional camp book. I'm going to give each member of the leadership team a stack of sticky notes. And I want you to write on it answers to this question, your own question, applying your own values and the values of our community. What makes a good person? Think of your best friends. Think of people you admire. And they're going to write down kind. Of course, they're going to write that. They're going to write down respectful. They may write down, for some people who are very arts oriented, creative will be one of the first they write. People who are working at a camp that is faith focused are going to say spirituality and things like that. And they'll put all of this on, and you cover the wall with these sticky notes. And then you organize the sticky notes. And every time I do this for leadership team, it's the same 5 or 6 groups of qualities, all these related words together. I want to acknowledge that there is no one right way to be respectful. In some cultures, for example, looking at me directly in the eye would be taught by your parents to be disrespectful. In some instances, kindness is letting people learn to do things themselves and to not necessarily parent by helping and rescuing as much as we do in some cultures, et cetera, et cetera. The specific behaviors that demonstrate these qualities, those may vary from community to community, but the actual character education that we want to do, we don't need a task force for this, okay? You just need to take from the book this 20-minute activity with sticky notes, and you'll just put it right out on your wall. It'll be so plain and clear the changes you want to make in young people. And then you can decide what the specific behaviors you are that serve your young people. At some day camps, we serve young people who are lucky if they have one parent at home. They are lucky if they have enough for 3 meals a day. They may be different than in communities where they have somebody make their bed every day because it's a paid member of the household crew. Yeah, of course, these things are different, but these are specific behaviors, and we can focus on those without making it hard to identify what we mean by character education. Yeah, so that's one of the barriers I'm seeing, and I'm trying to cut through that and help people realize, please don't make that more complicated than it is.
The Day Camp Podcast is brought to you by CRS, Commercial Recreation Specialists, your go-to source for recreation solutions that will help ensure that your camp thrives this summer. Check out their inflatable aqua park courses for pools or lakes, the prime carts, the cool little go-kart things, the emergency alert and lightning detection systems. Whoa, the splash pads. Whoa, if you got the money for that, splash pads is the way to go with the heat we got. The Zoom Flume, a lot less money, and talk about the most awesome water slip and slides that you could possibly get. The jumpers, okay, for bouncing all around the place. Mini golf. The prefab cabins and pavilions and bathrooms, the shade structures. Lord, do we need shade structures these days? The shade structures cannot be beat. And of course, the playgrounds, including the ones with the cool musical components. Anyway, CRS Commercial Recreation Specialists, your go-to source. Explore their website today at crs4rec.com because CRS is serious about fun.
I feel like people start off their seasons optimistic, mission driven, and all that. And then it quickly turns into let's get through this. And we don't have enough staff, and there's ratios and this and that. And it takes focus and discipline also from the people. And you say, why are we here? Right? If you're starting with that question, which I do at my camp every year, and you're the person that's setting the example, and then your next level, your leadership team, they're really carrying the mission across too. So how can camps get their leadership team and staff more focused on the mission as well?
Well, in one of my first books, I said that there's what I call the participation principle. And my participation principle says people take better care of things they help create. So one of the ways is by doing what Sam explained. You kicked it off beautifully. You get your leadership team together, you order pizza. In the book, I say, you don't do pizza, you're doing this at your peril. You order pizza for everybody, you sit down at a table, and you get them to have input on what we mean when we say our mission is youth development. And this isn't done. I'm going to be vague here. I hope this is okay. I'm speaking at an upcoming conference. It's not National ACA and it's not Tri-State. I'll be at both of those, but I'm speaking soon. And to prepare for my keynote for that, I went on the website to camps in that region, and I tried in an, I admit, unscientific way, but I looked up 10 or 12 camps websites at random. Day camps, also resident camps, faith-based camps, health-based camps, park department and park district camps, all of those different. And I looked and I discovered what I always discover, which is that we're good, but we could be much gooder, as I like to say, if we told people on our landing page, on the page you go to when you click on the name of our camp, the answer to the "why are we here" question. People think that they're doing that, and that's a barrier because we think we're done with that. I mean, wait. Yeah, here. All right. So here's my notes from just like 2-3 days ago. Outdoor fun. I'm going to immediately say that isn't wrong to say. I like to say over pizza, in the most loving and gentle way, is that your answer to the "why are we here" question? Or is that an environment and a tool that you use to accomplish what I think is camp's core and greatest purpose, which is to change human beings? Because outdoor fun can be used to teach kids to be confident and kind and respectful and responsible and independent, etc. Outdoor fun is a marketing tagline. Again, I want to say 100 times in bold words here. There's nothing wrong with having that on our homepage and on everything, stickers, t-shirts, everything. The question is, what's the purpose of the outdoor fun? That's what we don't want to lose sight of. That's what makes our camp not interchangeable, not fungible, an interchangeable thing from other camps in your community. If you want to stand out, let people know what you're using the outdoor fun for. I'm going to give you some more. Adventure came up. Excitement came up. These are good words. Don't take them off. And this is not a criticism. I just want us to use this year to be more thoughtful and ask our leadership team, what are the adventures for? What's the excitement about? On occasion, you'll get something that I wrote this one down, personal growth, but it doesn't say what the growth is. Okay, Andy, when you say these are our star points, these are the things that you're going to grow. You're going to learn this at camp. You're going to learn that at camp. They know they're going to learn water sports at day camp. They know maybe they'll ride horses. They know they're going to learn leather making at day camp. But is that our main purpose? Is that the reason that we're here? There were some of the websites I look at that didn't have any answer to why we're here. They simply had join us, and they have an activity schedule.
It's transactional.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Look, fun-filled activities. And then I'll give you my two favorites. These are my two award-winning favorites. One is Memories for a Lifetime.
Yeah.
And when a director says Memories for a Lifetime, I put my hands on their shoulders and I give them a hug. I ask first, I say, can I give you a hug? And they said, yes. And I smile at them. And in the most loving way I can say, memories of what? Okay.
Yeah.
And they have an answer. There's a lot of blinking. And then there's the answer. And they'll say, well, campfires. Even at day camp, we have campfires and cookouts and things like that. And I say, and what do you want my son or daughter's memory of that campfire to be? And they say, what do you mean? And then you can say to those people, starting with your leadership team, yes, s'mores. Yes, cookouts. Yes, campfires where we sing and we do skits and things like that. I want a kid's memory of campfires to be, I had to stand up in front of the whole day camp and introduce my groups and the song that we were going to sing. And that was scary because there were so many people. But my counselor said that we could practice it and that she would stand next to me when I did it. And when I was done, she said I was brave and that there were a lot of grown-ups who have to give toasts at wedding and they don't know how to do this, standing up in front of a large group. And for 4 months before their friend gets married, they're taking Pepto-Bismol because they're so nervous about giving a speech. And I got up in front of everybody. That, dear friends, that is a memory that lasts a lifetime. And then if you say, well, how do I make that happen? Go back. How do you think you make that happen? What you do is make sure that at an event like that, a special event, a day camp or campfires or whatever, you include as part of the program that you don't just bring Sam's girls up to sing the Baby Shark song. Somebody from the group introduces the song and has to hold maybe a microphone or not and sends their voice all the way to the back. So these are things that would be more specific. And the other one, other than memories, is friends for a lifetime, which I have spoken about at many conferences, and I have vowed never to stop doing that until our websites say, if you come to our camp, you'll learn how to make friends for a lifetime. It's not that you will get friends for a lifetime. That may not necessarily happen. It's not automatic. If we could make camp teach kids how to make friends, and there are games and activities, and there are ways of taking activities that you already do at camp. That was a big thing when I was writing. It was why it took a while for me to finish this book. It's because I wanted to say to people that you can take the things you already do, and with a slight twist to it, you can make it about the things that bring out the greatest promise of camp, which is to change people forever.
Right. Right. I take a cue from Jay Jacobs when I worked for him. We called it the skills of making and keeping friends, which I love.
And I'm so glad the word skill is there. It is a skill. Yes. I didn't make friends. My parents sent me to wonderful Chicago suburban day camps. I probably went to 3 or 4 of them. And I didn't make friends for a lifetime, for which I always say I feel responsible. I look back. We all look back at our young lives, right? And I say, what was wrong with me? What? I know I was very shy. I was introverted. I know it was hard for me to sit with people I didn't know at lunch. It still is for me as a grown-up. I still tend to be a quiet person, which always shocks people to know because of what I do for a living. But I didn't make friends for a lifetime. I certainly don't have any lifetime friends. I can't name a friend from camp. I can remember one counselor from a camp that I worked with as a fellow counselor who was one of my longtime best buddies. But no one at any of those day camps showed me, here's something you can do to help make a friend. Here's something you can do to be kind to your friends. Because frankly, that wasn't on the schedule. As I've said in workshops many times, you will never at any camp in North America ever hear somebody say, come on, you guys, it's 9:45, they say to their campers. It's time for persistence. We never say that because it's not on the schedule. And that's the biggest barrier, Andy, that this stuff isn't on the schedule. And my message to all of our friends is it can be on the schedule.
Yeah.
And it should be. And we can be excited about this. It's motivating to know we can make this summer even more mission directed. That's
right.
Good.
And when you talk about intentional camp, you can have your specialists, you could have the people who do the programs incorporate this stuff. That could be mandatory, that they incorporate this stuff into their curriculums, into what they do. It's not just that kind of thing. Like it should be something that they have to do. And just going back to, you were talking about the hyperbole that's on websites, speaking in superlatives. We're in a world now where authenticity is what people want. And they don't want your jargon.
Nice word.
They don't want your BS. Like they want to know like the real stuff. And guess what, folks? This is the real stuff. This is the real stuff that kids walk away with. When you talk to your counselors that you're interviewing that used to go to camp and say, what do you remember most from camp? Right? They don't say kicking a soccer ball into the goal, drawing a picture. No, they're talking about all that in between stuff. They're talking about the like you said, grabbing the microphone in front of hundreds of people. That's the kind of stuff that they remember. So you might as well talk about it. So if somebody wanted to do something within 5 minutes after hearing this podcast, Michael, because we're winding down, what should they do? Where do they get started here?
Wow. Well, for sure, I would get with the leadership team and refresh and refine the mission by defining what changes do we want to make in our campers. That's the first thing. It can be, you can send an email 5 minutes from you're listening to this saying, let's have pizza. This can be done on Zoom with people buying their own, because sometimes we don't have the ability to have everyone in the same room. And some people, their leadership team consists of teachers and others, and they have busy schedules. But let's at least get together and do what, I'll take my glasses off here. I describe this as an annual eye checkup. Once a year, we should check our lenses to be sure that we're looking at our camp through the proper prescription. And we're not throwing out what we did before. We are not starting from scratch, but we are just taking a deep breath and saying, if we ask the question, what makes a good person? What are our targets? What are the points that we're trying to do? And there's ways of leading that specific discussion that I detail in one of the chapters, because the questions that you ask help people be specific in their answers so that they're all involved. If you want a fun thing to do, some camps have a glossary of terms that they have at their camp, and I love that. They have on their website, for example, and they provide it to staff in the staff manual. Hold that staff manual thought for a minute, and they have it in the materials they give to staff. And it's a list of all the different special terms that we have here. One fun thing you can do right away is to start making that list of terms and ask yourself, the title of one of the chapters is, what do we call it and why? And simply take a fresh look at what we call things. I'll give you a couple of quick examples, or this doesn't make any sense. There's a lot of camps that call their leadership team unit heads, section heads. All of them have heads for some reason. They call them supervisors or whatever it is. It would be neat. Those aren't wrong. But if I were in the room having pizza with you, I would say, what temperature do those terms have? Are they warm or are they cold terms? What could we call these people? There's people who have the job of filling in every day in a different job. We call them floaters, which sounds like dead bodies in a CSI episode or something like that. There's these things that we call people, and places. For example, there's a lot of people say, well, we're going to go to Flagpole. Instead of calling it Flagpole, what if we called that Friendship Circle? Think of the things that we could call everything that makes it more related to the mission. This is really fun. It's that sacred cow sort of thing. And you don't have to change anything. Some of the terms that you use are wonderful. This reaffirms our smartness about calling it that. But you'll find that there's lots of things. I'll give you my one final example. I promise, Andy and Sam, it'll be my final example. This is very day camp, okay? Every camp has names for the age groups at day camp. And they have names for the swim groups at day camp, if you have a swimming program. Not every camp does, but maybe most do. Why are the junior swimmers always called the tadpoles? Why couldn't we call the little kids who don't know how to swim the barracudas or the sharks? Or why can't we give them cool names? It's not that we're taking away cool names from the older ones. There's plenty of really cool marine life that you can use to call everybody, but call them the stingrays. I mean, call them something that's awesome. People say to me, oh, but it's a tradition to call our junior group the little buddies or something. That I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but once a year, it's fun over pizza to say, what do we call things? And is there a way of making this about what we want camp to feel like and what we want our mission to be? And that's something that you can do right away, is to start compiling that list and then just sharing it with people with the goal of identifying what we should do. And if anybody says to you, well, but it's a tradition to do this or whatever, please use my Michael line and say to them, yes, it is a tradition. We have great respect for tradition. And one of our greatest traditions at our camp is that we change things from time to time to demonstrate our creativity. That's one of the best traditions we should have.
I love it. Growth mindset. Yeah, I having started Liberty Lake, it's easy to, when you start a camp, to just have the barracudas and call things like all this cool stuff and all this kind of stuff. The hard part is at a 100-year-old camp where people are stuck on Flagpole and they just don't realize how unbelievably boring that is. And someone needs to tell them that. And sometimes, and I always empower my new people, my first year people, especially like first year administrators. I say, you guys have insight. You guys, myself and my people, like we're used to seeing it this way. We need someone to point it out. Tell them our mission. And this is such a great exercise, Michael. There's so much in there. I think that a lot of stuff that is called things comes with a little disrespect sometimes. I don't really realize. You're calling people junior counselors. Do you really have to call them junior counselors? Like, how are you trying to make them feel? You already pay them terribly. Now you're going to call them junior counselors?
Wait, they get paid, or do they pay to be junior counselors in the program? Just a minute. Scandal. Yeah. Scandal. That's in the next James Patterson book. It's called Junior Counselor. That's right. That's right. No, it's a mystery.
that is really, really terrific. I thank you so much on that. So anyway, I want to thank our friends at CampMinder, at AMSkier, and at Commercial Recreation Specialists for helping bring our podcast to you. If you like what you hear, subscribe to the Day Camp Pod on your favorite podcast platform. Check out our show notes from all our episodes at daycamppodcast.com, as well as contact info for the show, for our guest, michaelbrandwein.com. All right. And all of these things he's doing in the spring in Illinois. And of course, his on his website, you'll have links to his books, all right, including his new one, of course. And to Sam from Crystal Lake Park District as well. Right. And thank you for listening. Sam and I will be at Tri-State also with Michael. We'll be running a day camp roundtable there. And Sam will be doing it at ACA National. Yeah, we appreciate it. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with another episode of the Day Camp Pod. Thanks, Michael. We really appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for all you're doing to support everyone's great work.
The Day Camp Podcast is brought to you by Go Camp Pro and the Go Camp Pro Podcast Network. Find a podcast for camp professionals of every age and stage at gocamp.pro/podcast. Thanks for listening, friends. Hey, Camp Pros, we love that our industry is built on sharing. In order to foster that spirit, we hope that whenever you share an idea that you learned from the Camp Hacker podcast, conference, summer camp professionals group, or wherever else, that you're quick to give credit where credit is due. That way, we can all encourage more camp pros to share the tips and tricks that will make camp better.